I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Technology Report. Builders in developing countries are often not required to build strong buildings. So, when a disaster strikes, the damage is often widespread. Yet Japan is one of the most developed countries in the world. Still, the March 11th earthquake and tsunami waves destroyed more than 14,000 buildings. Brady Cox is an assistant professor of civil engineering at the University of Arkansas. He is also an earthquake expert with an organization called Geotechnical Extreme Events Reconnaissance, or GEAR. The group studies major disasters. Professor Cox says Japan has one of the best building code systems in the world. However, he says, this earthquake was huge, one of the top 5 earthquakes in recorded history. So anytime there is an earthquake that large, there is going to be damage. The quake measured magnitude 9. He says one thing many people don't understand is that building codes are meant to prevent loss of life in earthquakes. That doesn't mean that the buildings won't have major damage. Mr. Cox says Japan has invested a lot in seismic research and design since a magnitude 7.5 earthquake in Niigata in 1964. That same year, a 9.2 quake shook the American state of Alaska. He says those 2 earthquakes opened up a lot of new research on something called soil liquefaction. Soil liquefaction is the process by which the strength or stiffness of soil is weakened by an event like the shaking of an earthquake. The soil begins to move like liquid. Professor Cox says the first step to designing an earthquake-resistant building is to study the soil. Then, the structural engineers take that information and decide the details of the construction, such as, is this going to be a steel structure? Is it going to be reinforced concrete? How will the framing of the building be designed? A team from Geotechnical Extreme Events Reconnaissance is going to Japan to examine the destruction. Mr. Cox says they will also be working on rebuilding efforts. They want to make sure that schools, hospitals, police and fire stations, and government buildings are rebuilt well. Mr. Cox and other members of GEAR went to Haiti after the powerful earthquake last year and continue to work with Haitian officials. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. A new study says the leading cause of disability in older people in low and middle income countries is dementia. The researchers disagree with the World Health Organization, which says blindness and other vision problems are the leading cause. Dementia is a loss of intellectual ability that affects memory, learning, attention, thinking, and language skills. People with dementia may forget family members or not know what day it is. Sometimes they become angry or sad, hear voices, or see things that are not there. Renata Souza from the Institute of Psychiatry at King's College London and other researchers wrote the new report. Their study looked at the causes of disability among 15,000 people aged 65 or older in 7 countries. The countries were China, India, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Mexico, and Peru. The team found that dementia was the largest cause of disability in the elderly in areas other than rural India and Venezuela. Other major causes were stroke, loss of use of arms or legs, arthritis, depression, eyesight problems, and gastrointestinal problems. In low and middle income countries, heart disease and cancer get much of the attention given to chronic diseases. The researchers say increased importance should be given to chronic diseases of the brain and mind. As populations age, societies will have to deal with more and more cases of dementia. The study says the elderly are 9% of the total population of low and middle income countries today, but their numbers are growing quickly. They are expected to reach 20% of the total population by the middle of the century. The study appeared in the Lancet Medical Journal, which published a special issue on disability. A separate study of 18 low and middle income countries dealt with children. It found that in almost half the countries, children who were not breastfed were much more likely to have a disability than those who were. The same was true of those who did not receive vitamin A supplements and those who were underweight. Children who did not take part in early learning activities or attend school were also more likely to be disabled than those who did. Researchers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the United States and UNICEF did the study. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Development Report. Today we have the second of 2 reports explaining how to prepare fish by drying or smoking them. We talked last week about the first steps of cleaning and salting freshly caught fish. The directions can be found on our website, voaspecialenglish.com. To dry fish, you will need either a drying table or a place to hang them. If a table is used, it should have a top made of wire screen or thin pieces of wood with space between each piece. Lay the cleaned and salted fish still wet on the table. Do not let them touch each other. Be sure that air can flow around the fish from all sides, including the top and bottom. Build a small smoky fire under the drying table for the first day to keep the flies away. After that, you can keep the flies away by covering the fish with a thin cloth. Do not let the cloth touch the fish. Fish taste better if they are out of bright sunlight while they are being dried. For best results, put the drying table under a tree. Turn the fish over every other day. Small fish will dry in about 3 days if the air is dry. Large fish will take a week or 10 days to dry. After the fish have dried, place them in a basket. Cover them with clean paper or large leaves. Then put the basket in a cool, dry place off the ground. Make sure as much of the salt water as possible is removed before you smoke the fish. The smoking can be done in a large round metal container. Remove the top of the drum and cut a small opening on one side at the bottom. Cover the top with a strong wire screen. This is where you put the fish. Build a small fire in the drum by reaching in through the opening at the bottom. Wood from fruit trees makes good fuel for your fire. The wood will give the smoked fish good color and taste. Hardwoods, such as hickory, oak, and ash, also burn well. It is important to keep the fire small so it does not burn the fish. You want a lot of smoke, but very little flame. One way to get a lot of smoke is to use green wood, not dried wood. You should smoke the fish for 5 days or longer if you plan to store them for a long time. After you finish smoking the fish, remove them and let them cool. Then wrap them in clean paper. Put the fish in baskets and keep them in a cool, dry place off the ground. Dried fish must be kept completely dry until they are eaten. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Transcripts, MP3s, and podcasts of our reports are at voaspecialenglish.com. I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Development Report. There are different ways to store fish. 2 ways to keep fish for future use are canning and freezing. 2 other methods are drying and smoking. Today we have the first of 2 reports describing step-by-step how to prepare dried or smoked fish. Begin with fish that are just out of the water. If the fish are small, leave their heads on. Cut off the heads if the fish are longer than 20 centimeters or weigh more than 115 grams. Now clean the freshly caught fish. Cut off the scales and cut open the stomach. Remove everything inside. Then wash the fish in clean water and rub salt into them. Next, put the fish in a container with a solution of 300 grams of salt and 1 liter of water. This will remove the blood from the meat. Keep the fish in the salt water for about 30 minutes. After that, wash them again in clean water. Next, put the fish in a solution that has more salt in the water. The water should be salty enough so that the fish float to the top. If the fish sink to the bottom of the container, add more salt to the water. Cover the container with a clean piece of wood. Place a heavy stone on the wood to hold it down. Leave the fish there for about 6 hours. After that, remove them from the salt water and place them on a clean surface. Cover the fish with a clean piece of white cloth and let them dry. We are not done yet. We will discuss the next steps in drying fish next week. We will also describe the smoking process. Another method of preparing fish is called dry salting. Wooden boxes or baskets are used for dry salting. After cleaning the fish, put a few of them on the bottom of the box or basket. Cover them with salt, then put more fish on top. Cover them also with salt. Continue putting fish and salt in the container until it is full. Do not use too much salt when using the dry salting method. You should use 1 part salt to 3 parts fish. For example, if you have 3 kilograms of fish, you should use 1 kilogram of salt. Remove the fish after a week or 10 days. Wash them in a mixture of water and a small amount of salt and let them dry. We have talked a lot about salt. Keep in mind that doctors advise people to limit the sodium in their diet. It can raise blood pressure, and some people have more of a reaction than others. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Transcripts and MP3 archives of our reports are at voaspecialenglish.com. This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. Today, we continue our report on efforts by the Obama administration to increase internet freedom around the world. Alec Ross, a senior advisor to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, recently discussed these projects with VOA's Persian News Network. He says, we're spending this money so that values that are centuries old, that go to things like the freedom of expression, the freedom of the press, and the freedom to organize, are available in the digital age. The New York Times reported that the State Department expects to have spent about $70 million on these efforts by the end of this year. Alec Ross says one project involves a so-called panic button. People could use it to quickly remove a list of contacts from a phone or computer. He says what's happening right now is people are being arrested and they are being forced to hand over their passwords a lot of the times for their social media accounts. Freedom House, an organization in Washington, released a Freedom on the Net report in April. The group studied 37 countries. It found that 23 of them had arrested internet users for content posted online. 19 of the countries at least partially controlled international connections to the internet, and at least 12 had interfered with networks, listened in on people's communications, or taken down websites. Iran has one of the most extensive systems of online censorship. The Iranian government controls all internet entry points into the country. Iran has also announced plans to build its own national internet. But the Wall Street Journal reported last month that few people think Iran could completely cut its links to the wider internet. The newspaper said Iran could move toward a system of 2 internets like a few other countries. Ken Berman leads anti-censorship projects for the Broadcasting Board of Governors, the parent agency of VOA. He says China is considering the same thing, of basically having a closed system that would be hard for outside information to get in on. Alec Ross at the State Department says the global community should respond wherever freedom of expression is under attack. Sometimes that is in countries that have more closed information environments. But oftentimes, frankly, it's in countries where the United States has friendly relationships with their governments, but where we have differences of opinions about how open an information environment should be. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.